So we are at humanity's darkest hour. No, let me correct. We were at humanity's darkest hour. And the brutal beating and the awful crucifixion of our Lord. But I told you, the next time we would get together, it would be the dawn of a new day. So that's where we're starting. It's bright. It's quite literally sunshiny. It is a splendid day. We're not dealing with the death of Jesus anymore. Today we're going to be talking about his life from the 24th chapter of Luke. Everybody's so happy to see Gage. Look at that. Love that guy. Luke chapter 24. If you haven't already opened, please do so. And we're going to be covering hopefully at least the first 27 verses today. We'll see how things go. So in Luke, the 24th chapter, in verse 1, remember Jesus has been put into the grave, and there was a hurry to do so. Why is that? Why do you need to hurry up to, and not just for Jesus, but also to get the dead people off of the crosses. I know that doesn't sound very nice, but that's the way it's being looked at the time. And why do we need to get Jesus in the grave especially? What was about to transpire? There was a Sabbath, good, which simply means a rest, right? It doesn't mean seventh. It just means a rest. So there's a rest that's coming, and this is a special. John says this is a high day, a high Sabbath, meaning it's not an ordinary, it's a very special Sabbath. It's not your typical Saturday one, but it's going to be the Passover observed. Okay, chapter 24, verse 1. We are 3 days. Matthew would say 3 days and 3 nights later. Many have long taken that as a figure of speech, meaning still parts of 3 days. I don't think that's the meaning of it. I think he's literally talking about 3 days and 3 nights. Verse 1 of Luke 24. Now on the first day of the week, does anyone have something different than first day of the week there? Probably not, but I'm just curious. It would probably take a literal translation of the Bible, like Young's literal, something like that. The actual reading here is, if you have day like mine, it's in italics. It's not found there. Now on the first of the Sabbaths, plural, is the way that reads. You might be wondering, well, how do you get the first day of the week out of the first of the Sabbaths? Here's the way that works. The Hebrews count weeks on the basis of ordinary Sabbath days. And so you would have a set of Sabbaths, or from one Sabbath to the next one, a set of days until the next Sabbath. Of course, that's going to be 7 days. And what they're saying is on the first of a Sabbath week. So what's the first day of the week for these people? It's the Sabbath that's going to conclude their week, so that's going to be, to us, after Saturday. Sunday is what that would mean for us, and so that's the first day of the week. That's how they get that, in case you're wondering. But that's the way the Hebrews would talk. Now, on the first of the Sabbaths, which is the first day of the week, very early in the morning, I told you, this is the dawn of humanity's darkest hour is finished. We're moving on from that point. Very early in the dawn of a new day, they and certain other women with them came to the tomb, bringing the spices which they had prepared. Does anybody know who the women were who came to the tomb? Because Luke right here at the start of chapter 24 doesn't reveal to us. They and certain other women, and actually other women is in italics, they and certain with them, the 3 Marys, okay, that would certainly be a good guess, wouldn't it? Because at the foot of the cross, we know we have 3 Marys. Who are they? Mary Magdalene? Seem to be probably, maybe. Mary, we know it would be Mary, the mother of Jesus, because John says, or Jesus says to John, woman, behold your son, behold your mother, entrusting his mom into his care. So, good. And then I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, Mary, the wife of Clopas. Does that sound familiar? I think is also the case. All right, so let's look at these different gospel accounts. And if you want, as always, keep your spot here. You might keep it in some of these others. Turn to Matthew 28. We're in the last chapter of Luke, looking at the first verse. So let's look at the last chapter of Matthew in the first verse. And then we'll look at Mark, last chapter, first verse. Matthew chapter 28, verse 20. Now after the Sabbath, okay, I pointed this out to you, I believe, last week, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a couple weeks ago. What's unique about Matthew's account of this when he says, now after the Sabbath? It's not a good translation. It's the English Standard. I'm sure the New King James and probably all of our others do the same thing. You remember this? What's unique about Matthew speaking of the Sabbath compared to the others? After the Sabbath? Okay, that sounds a little different than the one we read. Good.
Well, I wasn't thinking that. 6 o'clock.
Good. All right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, that's true. Can't disagree with that. Anything else? Matthew's is the only account, and we don't translate it very well into most of our versions, but where it's plural. So literally it reads here, and after the Sabbaths. I don't know why all the translators of our circulated versions overlook the plural here. That's significant. There's nothing wrong with saying after the Sabbath singular, because this did take place after a Sabbath. But there's nothing wrong also with including more detail, as Matthew does, and saying, actually there were 2 Sabbaths. I'm sorry. Right. No, none of them do. Yeah. No, I'm saying in the original manuscripts, yeah, it's plural in Greek, not in English. Yeah. And I want to say, again, I'm pretty sure Young's might get this one, which is often the case. Young's literal translation where it's Sabbaths, plural. Yes, sir.
Mine's got it capitalized.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, a lot of times it's not. And probably talking about the seventh day, which is correct. As all the other versions, or as the other, accounts, the gospel accounts will mention, it does happen after Saturday. That's right. But remember, there's back-to-back Sabbaths here that take place. Sabbath does not mean seventh, even though Sabbath usually does occur on the seventh. It means rest, and there are special rests for the Jews. We know that Passover took place the day after Jesus was crucified, as far as the Passover observed. He was killed on the 14th day of Nisan, first month to the Jews, at twilight, and the next day, which you pointed out, starts at 6 p.m. for the Jews. He's already dead. He's already been put into the tomb. Then they eat the Passover feast. That's a special day of rest. Jesus would not have been killed and all that work going on the Passover, because that's a Sabbath day that the Jews would have violated. They knew not to do that. But they had to get fully ready. They'd started getting ready already. And then they're going to observe the first day, which is a Sabbath, on Friday. And then a second Sabbath, their ordinary one, that's going to take place on Saturday. On Saturday. So Matthew makes clear after the Sabbaths, plural. Joe, did you raise your hand? Oh, I'm sorry. Did someone else? I thought I saw a hand raised. Okay, my bad. After the Sabbaths, plural, toward the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. Okay, so thank you, Justin, about the Mary information. We have Mary Magdalene, who's a very close friend of Jesus. We're going to be reminded, what had Jesus done for this woman that endeared her so much to him? Cast demons out of her. How many? 7. Johnny on the spot. Very good. Johnny right in front. But Johnny in the spot to the back. Good job there, Jeff. 7 demons, a perfect helping, healing, cleansing that Jesus has provided to this woman, and she never wants to leave Jesus' side, it seems like, from this point forward. In fact, in John's account, when she sees and experiences the Jesus of new life, she won't hardly let the guy go. He has to help her out with that because she never wants to be separated from him. Very special relationship the two of these enjoy together. And then the other Mary, which one is this? We're not told right here, but maybe we can get some more information. Turn to Mark's Gospel account, chapter 16. Mark 16, the last chapter of the Gospel according to, and the first verse of this fellow. Verse 1. When the Sabbath was past, see, they're all talking about the same event here. So it's the dawn of a new day, the first day of the week. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James. Okay, so that's helpful. Who's Mary, the mother of James? I had to look this one up just to make sure I had the right one. Okay, very good. We could be talking about Jesus' mother. Any other James who's significant to Jesus' life? He has a brother named James. Who else? I'm sorry? The disciple named James. I hate to do this to you, Cindy. Which one? There are two Jameses numbered among the apostles. All right, I think there's one who's a little more obvious than the other one. Who's he? Sing the apostle song if you need to. Very good. Excellent. Excellent, Jamie. Jamie says about James the son of Zebedee, whose brother is sons of thunder, John. Okay? And then there's another James that we don't know nearly as well. James, the one they called the poor guy. Yeah. Oh, I'm James. Oh, James the brother. No, I'm lesser. Oh, okay. Yeah. James, the one that I don't know if that's why. Maybe because he's shorter or something like that. Maybe he's not as old. That could be too. But James, the one they called the less. Which one? Well, it seems to be the mother of the James that they called the less. And here's why. We do know about Salome, bless you, is how you pronounce her name from the Greek terminology. Salome, we might call her, brought spices so that they might go and anoint him. Salome is the mother of James and John. And we do know that from elsewhere. So the other Mary has to be James, the one they call the less, or, well, as Paul pointed out, it could be Jesus' mother also, right? But we do know her name to be Mary, and it's widely believed that's the case, and I wouldn't make a big deal out of it. You have Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James. It would make a lot more sense if it would be stated Mary the mother of Jesus, the guy who's, the retention's on here, if it's the same one. And then Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint him. Okay, so say all that to say this back in our text, chapter 24 and verse 1 of Luke. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they and certain other women with them, we're going to encounter some more women as we go down through here in just a little bit, came to the tomb bringing the spices which they had prepared, a special treatment of Jesus' body. They were so surprised, though, in verse 2, when they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. And Luke doesn't have any information here other than the stone was gone from the mouth of the tomb, not like disappeared, but it wasn't covering the entrance any longer. Does anybody recall what was done involving this stone? It was sealed, we're told. Okay? Pilate said, by the request of the Jews, go and make it as secure as you know how. It was sealed. How would a tomb stone be sealed back in those days? There you go. You got stone to stone. How do you attach rock? Mortar. We do that today on houses, right? So there's mortar that would likely attach it from the ceiling, and sometimes there's something else that is done also. Joe? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. It would seem so. And yeah, there would be, and when he says like a rope, I mean, this isn't like decorative, okay? I mean, this is help to secure it into place so that it can't move. And Pilate says, go and make it as secure as you know how. Meaning, as, if not more secure than any tomb that's ever been. It's going to be like Fort Knox, okay? I imagine also, yeah, there's probably going to be a trench dug where a big heavy stone is going to be down into. It's sealed with mortar, and there is some type of fixture, very likely, put across the front of it to help hold it into place also. This stone should not be going anywhere without a whole lot of force being exerted and a lot of effort being put forth to do so. They found this stone rolled away from the tomb. How's that even possible? Keep your spot. Turn back to Matthew's account. Chapter 28. We read verse 1, so we'll continue in number 2. And behold, we're told, there was a great earthquake. For an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. Why do you think he hangs around sitting on that stone? I think it could be one of two things, or maybe two of two. Okay, one, so maybe he can encounter and talk to people who come looking. Good. We're going to find there's some interaction. What else? Okay, maybe even an angel's tired. I'm sorry. Right. Could be. You ever watch a basketball game and they're just two heavyweights that are going at it and just exchanging buckets back and forth, and then one stops play because just throws it down on the other one, and maybe it's an and one. He's going to the line afterward, and he'll just kind of stand over the guy or just walk over the top of him. I don't know. I wonder if something like this, so that the Romans and the Jews have flexed their muscles about Jesus and what they've done to him. And might it be that God, through this angel, is just standing over the top of what he's done, flexing his muscles to show them? Joe? Makes a lot of sense. Good, Joe. Verse 3, then they went in and did not find the body of Jesus. Who is this? This is the women who have come to anoint the body of the Lord. Fourth verse, and it happened as they were greatly perplexed about this, that behold, two men stood by them in shining garments. And so it seems to be two people with just like we are, but there's something different about their appearance. The word used here for shining has the same root as lightning. So think about lightning in the sky, and when you see it, how it'll startle you, almost feels like it blinds you, or even maybe partially so. It's just so bright. So that's the idea here. It's a brilliance like what you would see in the lights that flash across the sky. Who would like to say our memory verse, number 5? Amanda, please. Excellent. Thank you for that. So these women who beheld these men, but they're not ordinary men. There's something special about their appearance. They're so afraid, we're told they bow their faces to the ground. Don't even want to look at them because it's so bright. But these men speak something to these women. They ask them a question, or, well, I guess make a statement more. But it's a rhetorical question. Why do you seek the living among the dead? Isn't that a cool thought? For those who have passed on, we often think, well, we know better, but it's like it seems so final and, that kind of thing. But to God, they're not dead. To us, they shouldn't be dead either. In the Bible, death is described as asleep. The resurrection, about it, Jesus says, and the life hereafter, have you not read in the burning bush passage that God spoke to Moses saying, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In the case of Abraham, 500 years after he died. He is, therefore, not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. You're greatly mistaken in how you're looking at things, Jesus says. Go ahead. Yeah. You guys remember the story about how the guy divided chapters and verses in the Bible? Yeah, the word is that he was riding horseback across the countryside blindfolded. That's how it ended up. I don't know if it's true. That's what some people say. They don't always make a lot of sense. Chapters are the same way. It drives me nuts when chapters are divided mid-thought. But yeah, there are a lot of verses that do the same. I agree with you, Roy. Yes, Marcy. Right. So in Matthew's account, let's just read from it here really quickly. Chapter 28 and verse 2, we'd read just a moment ago. Thank you for that, Marcy. Behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. And for fear of him, the guards trembled and became like dead men. And we do know that there's a guard that's set at the tomb. And so absolutely, they would have been, it would seem, present for these events. And, these are guys that have seen everything. These are probably the toughest guys in the world. I mean, think of our military guys and what they've seen, especially those who have fought in war. That's these fellas, and they have never seen anything like it, and they are scared to death. They are shaking in their boots. And then we're told in verse 5, but the angel said to the women, do not be afraid, and that's kind of where we are right here in ours. Now, it's not stated that the women were there. It is mentioned right after the guards and what they've seen. But yeah, combining the two accounts, to me, it would seem like what Matthew's describing is the guards whose the presence was there. They've experienced all this, and they're afraid of it. The angel speaks to the women. Now, it doesn't say that the women are there before, and I know the way it kind of reads, it almost like, oh, as the guards were there, so also were the women. But yeah, it's never stated that the women were there in Matthew's account, but just that they're there when the angel's present and they have a conversation with him. Yeah. But it does read just a little bit differently. I'd agree completely so there. All right, so back in chapter 24, we just read our memory verse. So as they were afraid, they bowed their faces to the earth. That is the women. As they see these two men, they show up and they find the tomb already de-stoned, if you will. And they say to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead?" As Roy suggested, we should probably continue on into verse 6. He is not here, in case you haven't figured it out yet, but he is risen. You shouldn't be surprised about this either, is what he's saying to conclude verse 6. Remember how he spoke to you when he was still in Galilee, saying, "The Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and the third day rise again." I'm going to show you a map here. Of course, these events have taken place in the city of Jerusalem. You see it emboldened just a little bit more than the others in Judea. Find the province of Judea, and it's somewhat north-central in that. Jerusalem's where all these events have taken place. He says, don't forget what you were told when he was back in Galilee. 2 provinces up. Samaria, Galilee, part of which is the Sea of Galilee. I ask you, in keeping your spot, if you desire, turn back to Luke chapter 18. In Luke 18, we find this teaching, verses 31 through 34. Luke 18, starting in verse 31. And taking the 12, and in case you're wondering about our timeline here, if you'll look on into chapter 19, by verse 28, you have the triumphal entry. That's into the city of Jerusalem. Look in verse 1 of chapter 19 in Luke. He entered Jericho. Okay, so he eventually makes his way down to the emboldened city of Jerusalem in Judea, kind of north-central. We'll go nearly due east, just a little bit north from there, close to the Jordan River, but still in Judea, Jericho. So he's in Jericho, the start of chapter 19. He enters Jerusalem by verse 28 of chapter 19. Okay, so we're reading, though, in chapter 18, verse 31. And taking the 12, the apostles, he said to them, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem." They were not there yet. "And everything that is written about the Son of Man by the prophets will be accomplished." Just to make sure there's no misunderstanding, Jesus gets very specific. "For he will be delivered over to the Gentiles and will be mocked and shamefully treated and spit upon. And after flogging him," I mean, this is going through every piece of it, "they will kill him. And on the third day, he will rise." How do you misunderstand this? Verse 34, "But they understood none of these things." And I think a big part of it is it just does not fit their preconceived notions. Have you ever been that way and studied a passage of the Bible and you just could not wrap your head around it? Well, how does that, bless you? And how could this, and we just struggle so greatly. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. So I've told a few of you this, but over about the last 5 years, I've tried so much harder to, whenever I go into a passage or a subject, to discard everything I know and start at ground level and just piece together the information. Keeping this in mind, that people in Bible times who had no formal education, many of them could not read and write, but didn't have problems, not to the degree I'm afraid we do, of understanding the Bible. Arguably the most educated country in the history of the world, and we struggle with so many of these concepts. Well, they're failing to grasp because I think they're duplicating the mistake I've made many times in my life. I've gone into passages and subjects with preconceived notions. Well, I know this, 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 and this, and this. And then I can't understand the passage because of everything I know. And when you toss out everything you know, and you go in and try to figure out the passage from ground level, act like you're a little child even if you're not, it's amazing how quickly things begin to make sense and full sense. How could anyone misunderstand this? The Son of Man will be delivered to the Gentiles, mocked, shamefully treated, spit upon. They will flog him. They will kill him. And then 3 days later, he's going to get up from his tomb. You can't misunderstand that. But they understood none of these things. Not one. Why is this saying hidden from them, Luke goes on to say, and they do not grasp what he says? What do they have in their heads about the Messiah? It's a physical kingdom. His physical life is never going to end. The physical reign is never going to come to a conclusion. There's no earthly power that will ever touch it. Now don't misunderstand. If God wanted all those things to be the case, they absolutely would be. That was never his plan. It was always an eternal spiritual kingdom. I think the big reason they can't understand any of these things is because of all of their preconceived notions. What a needful lesson for us. We often fail to comprehend the simple things that God has to convey because all of our big-minded, preconceived notions. We think we're too educated, when in reality, more often than not, we've been too indoctrinated in something. You, sir?
Maybe a little bit deeper.
Yeah. The one who knows all has probably explained it the best way, would be my guess, wouldn't you? Probably so. Thank you, Joe. Look back in chapter 17 of Luke, verse 1, and then we'll return to our text. Chapter 17, Luke, I said verse 1, didn't I? I meant verse 11, sorry. 1:1. On the way to Jerusalem, so he's on his path to go to the emboldened city, north central in Judea, he was passing along between Samaria and Galilee. So it was in the area of Samaria and Galilee. What did he tell him? Chapter 18, everything that was going to befall him and that he would rise from the dead on the third day. So he's headed up from Galilee, goes down into Samaria, crosses over, visits Jericho, and then makes his way down to Jerusalem. Notice how this fits exactly what the doctor tells us later on. Chapter 24, where we find ourselves. Verse 6, he is not here, but he is risen. Remember how he spoke to you when he was still in Galilee, saying, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and the third day rise again. Fits the layout perfectly. So we look at verse 8. And they remembered his words. It's like, oh yeah, that's what he said. How many times have you been through a Bible study and you just can't wrap your head around it or what difference it makes or how it applies to your life? And then there's a life circumstance and it's just, you got to be kidding me. That's what we talked about a month ago in Bible class, that, sometimes it takes real life to make it come to life. Karen? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, right. Yeah, they appear to be angels for sure. Yeah. And I want to say, now here it's not stated, and someone else feel free to if you want to check. Let me just look really quickly. I want to say at least one of them it's outrightly stated. It may have been where we were reading. Yeah, there we go. So chapter 28 of Matthew, verse 2. Behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended. Yeah. So there it's actually stated that angelic activity is involved. Yes. Okay, which is often the case, though, and we've talked about this some in the past. It seems when angels frequently do their bidding, they show up in human form. And how do you get human form? You have a body, which I think goes back to Genesis 6 and Jude and 2 Peter 2, when there were times that angels who were given a human body just for a short time to carry out a task on earth abused the vessel that was provided to them. Yeah. But I think when it's stated 2 men, I personally believe they're probably in human form, that God's briefly given them a body to do some job as theirs. But the way they stand out, they're obviously not any normal human being. Does that answer your... Okay, yes, you're welcome. They remembered his words, verse 8, 24. Chapter 24, verse 9. Then they returned from the tomb and told all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. And we'll see the reaction of the apostles here in just a little bit. Verse 10. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, we can talk more about her in just a little bit, Mary, the mother of James, or Mary of James, literally, and the other women who were with them, who told these things to the apostles. Look at, if you don't care, turn to Luke chapter 8. I know there are several women who are mentioned here. There are other women that are quite important also. And it mentions the other women. Who might those be? Chapter 8, back earlier in Luke's account, the first 3 verses. Soon afterward, Jesus went on through cities and villages, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. And the 12 were with him, and also some women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons, as we pointed out earlier, had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's household manager, and Susanna, and many others who provided for them out of their means. So we're told who this Joanna is here. She's a servant of Herod, the king. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. Nobility's involved at this point. Susanna. Oh, Susanna. I wish I could tell you more than that, but I cannot. It's the only time her name is found in all the New Testament. We know nothing else about her. Other than this, apparently, she's a lady whom Jesus had greatly helped out, as he tends to do in his ministry. He looks out for females just as he does for males. He looks out for the young just as he does the aged and the middle-aged. That's the kind of person that Jesus is. All right, so when we read in our text, Luke 24, verse 10, it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and other women, probably some of these also, who had told these things to the apostles. You know, I didn't read, I'm sorry, maybe I did, I just didn't emphasize. And Luke 8, verse 3 at the end, many others, and many others who provided for them, some texts have for him, out of their means. These are special people to Jesus. And a number of them probably didn't have a lot. Whatever they had, they donated to the ministry to help out Christ. And Jesus meant a lot to them, but don't you know that they had to mean a lot to Jesus, the sacrifices they had made. I just wanted to say that before we moved on. So they're all excited, beside themselves. They come and they report this to the disciples who have heard this how many times out of Jesus' own mouth? Verse 11, and their words seemed to them like idle tales. We refer to old wives' fables, quite literally. Maybe it's a situation, it's just women telling stories is the way they would look at it. And they did not believe them. Verse 12, but Peter arose and ran to the tomb. Almost seems like in his mind, it's like, well, maybe, or maybe it's just he's wanting it to be that way. And stooping down, tomb's already open, he saw the linen cloths lying by themselves, in which Jesus' body had been wrapped, and he departed, marveling to himself at what had happened. He's thinking, well, this is kind of a strange scene, isn't it? Now, John's account records there's somebody else who goes to the tomb with Peter, running. And you see the difference in details in the account. They're not contradictory of one another, just one has a little more than what the other one possesses. So in Luke's account, Peter gets up and he runs to the tomb. That's true, Peter did that. Luke does not say, Peter alone did so. That would be wrong, because John's account includes who else running to the tomb? But in humility, he would say, and the other disciple. Or, well, the guy that Jesus loved. Maybe a little bit of a humble brag. What detail does he point out about this race that's run? John won, by the way, in case you're wondering. John includes that in his account. Humble brag. But yeah, He's not the only one, okay? But Luke only mentions Peter here. Okay, so that's this second appearance. And I say second, actually, you don't have the appearance in Luke's account, right? But if you look at the other, there's a time, of course, when Jesus shows up and he converses with Mary Magdalene. Well, this is another appearance that we find starting in verse 13, and we'll close out on this morning. Now behold, two of them were traveling that same day to a village called Emmaus, which was 7 miles from Jerusalem. This is one of the many places, I'll give you a blown up map here, one of the abundant spots in the Old Testament and New Testament. We're not 100% sure about the location of this place. Many believe it to be a little bit northwest of Jerusalem. The Bible tells us it's 7 miles away, so we know that for sure. Which direction? Okay, that's debatable. But it's widely believed for it to be a little bit to the northwest. That'll give us a little bit of perspective as we're reading about this. Behold, two of them were traveling the same day to a village called Emmaus, which was 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they talked together of all these things which had happened. What a day it's been. What a last 3 days. What a final week. The arrest, the torture of Jesus, his murder, buried, sorrow. 3 days later, nobody can find his body. Supposedly, these angels show up and start talking with others about it. And then, of course, Jesus supposedly has made an appearance to Mary Magdalene. What do we make of all this? This is crazy. So it was, verse 15, while they conversed and reasoned, that Jesus himself drew near and went with them. I don't know exactly how this happens, but you got two guys walking side by side, and before long you got a third guy walking along with them. Does he come from behind and front to the side? Does he teleport and they don't even notice? I don't know, but it sounds like he walks up to them from some direction and he goes with them. Verse 16 says, but their eyes were restrained so that they did not know him. This sounds like a miraculous intervention here to me, that some kind of blinders are put on their eyes. They know that there's a guy and someone talking, but they have no clue who this person is. And he said to them, what kind of conversation is this that you have with one another as you walk and you're sad? What's happened? Verse 18, then the name of one who was Clopas, who has a connection to a Mary, answered and said to him, are you the only stranger in Jerusalem? And have you not known the things which happen there in these days? There's been 2 earthquakes. There's been, I guess, an eclipse of the sun, unlike anything we've ever seen. It's so much longer than anyone that has ever been experienced before. The terrible murder of a just man. People are saying he rose from the dead. You haven't heard any of this stuff? And he said, what things? I'm curious. He doesn't say, no, I haven't heard anything. He says, oh, tell me more. I'd like to know. So they said to him, the things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and crucified him. We were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. They've lost their faith in the one who was killed. Indeed, besides all this, today's the 3rd day since these things happened. Yes, and certain women of our company who arrived at the tomb early astonished us. Pause. Why are they concerned about 3 days since all this happened? Apparently they remember what Jesus has foretold. He says, yes, and certain women of our company who arrived at the tomb early astonished us. When they did not find his body, they came saying that they had also seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. And certain of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not see. We were hoping maybe there's some kind of outside chance. There are times he'd talk about 3 days later, something big happening. Doesn't look like it's going to occur. Then he said to them, O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe in all that the prophets have spoken. You see, it wasn't just the testimony of Jesus. It was all the prophets had foretold all of these things. Ought not the Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory? Think back at what the prophets said. I know the time escapes us to do so. If we had it, I was going to read just a little bit from Psalm 22, which mentions, everyone understood that, by the way, in the Jewish circle to be a messianic prophecy. And Psalm 22, I want to say around verse 16, mentions, they have pierced my hands and my feet in the terrible treatment that the Messiah was to be given. The Messiah understood, Isaiah chapters 52 and 53, his appearance would be so marred, he wouldn't look like himself, wouldn't even look like a human being by the time they were done. And all this punishment would be put on him, not because of his wrongs, but to suffer on account of God's people. Ought not the Christ, the Messiah, to have suffered these things and to enter his glory? If you didn't believe him, don't you believe the prophets? Verse 27, and beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Don't forget, at this point, when we talk about the life of Jesus, we ordinarily open to the New Testament and we have a lot to cover. But the New Testament wasn't written back then. And so Jesus opened, of course he didn't need a Bible to do that, but he opened Moses, the writings of Moses, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, and all the prophets, and explained from all the scriptures everything about himself. Is that not cool? You don't have to have the New Testament to explain everything about the life of Jesus. You can do that from the Old Testament alone. We have the New Testament, which shows why we should trust the Old Testament because, okay, now here specifically is the fulfillment of all of these things. We shouldn't be surprised because from cover to cover, all the Old Testament included, it's all about Jesus and the victory he would win for God's people. We're going to finish talking about this conversation and the encounter of these men with Jesus on the road to Emmaus, as well as close out Luke's gospel account next week. So please read the remaining 26, if I'm not mistaken, 26 verses. We covered 27 today. And we're going to memorize, if you would be so kind, verse 32. Verse 32. The effect of Jesus' words on the human heart. Neat stuff. Okay, anything else, though, through first 27 verses? Yes, sir. Sure. It's possible. And it could be, too, he might have been covered up decently. It might be that they're so disappointed and not aware of their surroundings and so focused on their sorrows that they're just continuing to mostly look down and kick the dust and the stones. That could be. It might be explained naturally. Thank you, Roy. Okay, that's where we'll pick up next time. Thank you.